This is the camp before Washington on legendary difficulty. All of the support units in the Army are 3-star. You see I have 54 3-star infantry and 19 2-star infantry. So I started the camp phase with about 24 3-star infantry. All the infantry are 2,500. And I'm going to show you how I turned those 24 into 54. The first thing I recommend that you do is grind an infantry unit up to 3 stars, and then disband that unit and build a 750-man melee cav unit. And the purpose is to grind melee over 100. This is going to be the hardest skill to grind. Once you're way over 100 in melee, you want to disband that unit, and I recommend building 2 artillery units of 14 guns each, and then grinding all of your other skills way over 100. The reason is, when you get to this camp phase before Washington or Richmond, you only pay for skills up to 100. So we can take those men that have skills, say, to 200, we'll just say. But we're only going to pay for up to 100. That means it costs just a little bit more money for a unit that could have 200 or 250 in a skill, as a unit that has, say, 90 in every skill. The difference is not that much, because you only pay up to 100. Also, you only get credit for up to 100. Skills over 100 do not improve the performance of the unit. So when you get to this point of the campaign, you should have about $1 million, well, $2 million maybe if you're lucky, and you have nothing to do with it. There's nothing to buy and there's nothing to do. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the best men in the Army that have skills way over 100 in every skill, and we're going to just buy as many of them as we can. With 9 in training, it costs $77 and change per man. So with 10, it would cost you a bit less. And you can then have about 20,000 of these men, and when you blend them back into the Army, in the way that I'm going to show you, you can create a whole bunch of 3-star infantry units, or cav, or rifle cav, or artillery, or anything else that you want to build. And I could have built more 3-star infantry, maybe 4 or 5 more, but at some point I just stopped. It took me a long time to do this, and at some point I just said that's enough. But really, I have way too much money on hand, and the camp phase in the middle of the Battle of Washington, like over 200,000, and I have way too much infantry on hand. So the other thing I'm going to recommend is sell everything. So equip your army and then sell everything at the end of that. The reason is you don't have any idea what weapons you're going to need in the camp phase. So I have hundreds of weapons on hand that I didn't use. For example, I have like 10 artillery that were going to be replacements, but I didn't need any guns. So the reason I say sell everything is the buy and sell price is the same. So if you sell the guns for artillery, most of the artillery, so if you sell the guns and you don't need it, then you have the cash. If you do, you can buy them back at the same price you sold them for. For rifles, the difference is only $1. So I only had in my manpower pool about 1,200 men. So, and I didn't need all 1,200, as it turned out. I only lost 11,000 and change in the first phase, and all of my units were much bigger than I thought they were going to be going into the camp phase. I had to fill up the artillery, replace a tiny number of snipers and cav, rifle cav. Didn't need to replace any melee cav. Yeah, so all of the weapons should have been sold, and I could have spent a couple $100,000. Because there's nothing to do with the cash. I ended up buying a few rifles, but very few, a couple hundred rifles, maybe 400 or 500, I think. So instead of having rifles on hand, I could have sold all the rifles and just bought the tiny number that I needed losing only $1 each. I still ended up the camp phase with, I don't know how much money I have in inventory, but it's all wasted. It might be 100,000, might be 200,000, completely wasted, and over 200,000 in cash, nothing to do with it. So I would just warn you that you probably have more cash than you think. Anyway, I'm going to show you what I did in the camp phase, and hopefully it is helpful for you in your camp phase. Also, see Hi Bob War Bob. He has a very meticulous way he does it. I think my way is, I'm going to say faster and easier, but it still took me a very long time to do this in camp. You know, check out his video, see what works for you. But the whole trick is just build this super unit of super soldiers and buy as many of them as you can, and then put them in the army the way you want to upgrade your army. That's pretty much it. Spend all your money. Don't have any weapons in inventory when you start the battle. Have them on hand so you can buy them back. Have cash so you can buy what you need. That's pretty much it. Okay, on with the camp. Okay, here are the 2 artillery units that have all the best stats. And I only took them into 2 side battles, and they were able to get their skills up that high. So we're going to end up purchasing these guys. 202,611. And the stats are 48 efficiency, and you can see the other stats. But we're going to get up significantly higher than that with what we're about to do. So we still have a nice bump to morale, because we're at 63 and there really isn't anything I want to buy. I wish I'd made a couple more reputation purchases for reputation or for recruits. Okay, and this is where the unit is if we just stop right here. Very close to 3 stars, a very high 2-star. And the truth is, you could go into, well, you could certainly go into Richmond with everybody at a high 2-star and do very well. The high 2-star units perform, they're great. I guess the third perk for a sniper is particularly valuable and useful. But for infantry, I don't know, I don't think it makes that much difference. I'm showing you all the weapons I have. I spent a lot of time debating what weapons I was going to use. I had to figure out how many weapons I had and how many units I could build with the weapons I had available. And I'm showing you how much cash I have. Now for the officer corps. I have a really good officer corps, but I spent way too much time building 3-star officers. What I needed was 4 more brigadier generals. That's what I needed for my army to be just about perfect. Actually, I lost 2 officers on day 1, so 6 more brigadier generals. And my army would have been near perfect. And I could have done that instead of grinding. 3-star generals are not necessary. It's more important to have a whole bunch of brigadier generals. So, yeah, I recommend focusing on that. So take logistics to 5, and you can get training to 10, which makes this a little bit easier. So with good officers, yeah, you've probably never seen this before. Everything to 100. Okay, the first thing you're going to have to do is you're going to have to break down all of your units that are, 350 men per unit, and put them in large infantry units, because you're going to need space. I have an army of over 200,000, so you're going to need unit slots. And I found throughout the campaign buying a lot of farmers was a really good idea. The buy and sell price on the farmer is the same, so buying them doesn't cost you anything. You can always sell them back. But I also bought a lot of 42s and other things. Having excess weapons and officers on hand allows you to move men and units around, switch out weapons. It just gives you a lot of flexibility. Okay, so we're breaking down our best unit. And really, I didn't have very many unit slots, but after I broke down all my artillery and snipers and consolidated them into a couple of units, now I have space. So that's really good. So there we go. You never ever want to buy veterans for auxiliary units. It costs twice as much, but now we have infantry, we can go crazy. And that isn't the amount of money we have. We have closer to $2 million once I get rid of inventory. Yep, 78. It's rounded up. It's really 77 and change. So I'm going to show you that. Okay, that's not really helpful. I don't know why I thought that was going to be helpful, but it isn't. Because I started with 700. I need to take it up to 1,000. Men added, and that's how you see what the real cost is. Okay, at 1,000 it's 77 and change. So 77.05. And the game rounds it up to 78. So you can take this math, and again, if you had 10 in training, it would be slightly less, and you could then buy a few more men. The other thing I do is I get all my 3-star generals out of the army, and then I take my worst 3-star generals that don't have perks from earlier in the campaign, and I make them corps commanders, and I give them the perks I want, which speed. I want my men to have speed, which is, I think, the perk to have at Washington. Speed turns out to be really useful. My army runs literally circles around the enemy and captures enormous numbers of men. So there you can see it, speed, infantry, and then I like the flag, which reduces morale damage. Plus, I have +6 because I have very, very high reputation, and it just keeps the men in the fight, and that's what you want. Very handy perk to have. So goodbye, 10-pound parrots. In order for 10-pound parrots to be useful, you need a lot of time and a fairly static front. And on day one, which is what I'm building this army for, basically, to get through day one, the front is moving very fast. I think you'll be surprised how fast the front moves. It's crazy. Okay, what I'm doing here is I'm taking raw recruits and I'm dumping them, buying veterans, and the cost is 130,000. So that was with 700 men. With 500, it's more like 150,000. So, which makes sense. 2,000 men being added to 500 would be about 150,000. And then you can figure out how many you can have. And in this case, since I have about $2 million, it's a bunch. And I have more money than I'm showing right here. because I still have way too much inventory. Well, not, I have too much inventory. So once we get 2,500, we of course break it down to 500 so that we can then pour more raw recruits. So, or should I say, take the worst infantry we have and buy veterans. You don't want to take 2-star infantry and do this, because 2-star infantry, quite frankly, is fine, and we're going to do something else with the 2-star infantry, which I'm going to show you how to do, how to turn 2-star infantry into 3-star infantry. Okay, I come upon this idea, and I'm going to show you, you can, oh no, I'm not at that point yet. I'm still just getting rid of my worst infantry and pouring them into my units at 150,000 a pop. And really, there's nothing else to do with this money. Now, you could buy veterans throughout the campaign, but you're going to be buying veterans that are lower level, much lower level, because remember that this unit has skills way over 100. And the difference between what I'm paying here and what you will pay for, I don't know, high level 2-star or low level 3-star, it's not that great. So for this really gives you the biggest bang for the buck. This gives you the biggest payoff. And do you need to buy veterans throughout the campaign? I didn't think that I needed to buy veterans throughout the campaign. I thought the army was fine. In fact, for most of the campaign, I had 20 to 24 units of 3-star infantry just sitting and hold for, you know, entire side battles, while I put my 2-star infantry into the field to get experience. The 2-star infantry fought the campaign fine. I will say that the 3-star infantry are much better, as you're about to see day 1 of Washington. The other thing was that I finally used melee cav and rifle cav exactly the way I wanted to, and it worked. I mean, it just worked incredibly well. The melee cav did a great job. The rifle cav was OP, crazy powerful. Snipers did what snipers always do. The only disappointment was really the 24-pound howitzers, and that was because, as you will see, the front line moved so fast they couldn't keep up. So, okay, this is an idea I played with, which I threw away. And I recommend, you know, in camp, if you have an idea, try it out, see how it works. And I'm showing you this because this doesn't work. So all I'm doing is I'm putting raw recruits into a unit, and it's giving me a good infantry unit, okay? The problem is this thing is oddly too good. If you're going to do this, when you build 2-star infantry, you want them to be a little weaker than this, so you get more of them. Does that make sense? So the closer they are to just 2 stars, you want your 3-star infantry to be low 3 stars, so you get more of them. You want your 2-star infantry to be low 2-star, so you get more of them. That's how you max this out. So these are just a little bit too high. I mean, you could do this and you'd be fine, but and these would be good units in the final battle. Yeah, not bad, but that cost me a lot of my best men. I still have a bunch of units of like the best men. Let's call them 200 efficiency. They're probably not 200, but okay, I'm thinking there might be a better way to do this. Okay, what I decided to do is blend in 500 at a time until it hits just barely 2 stars. Okay, so this is another technique. I have whatever I have, almost 13,000. I mean, the game just floods you with raw recruits in the last 2 side battles. And so what are you going to do with them all? You can't get them into the battlefield. So what I decided to do is, okay, let's put 500 of these good men at a time into the 12,000 and see, because every time I do it, notice how the numbers go up. As soon as it hits 2 stars for the entire batch, then I've got a bunch. Then I've got 13,000 2-star infantry. Great. I actually thought about bringing in some number of 1-star infantry. I'm glad I didn't do that. I don't think that you have a need for 1-star infantry or a use. Yeah, every time I assaulted the forts, I looked around for my 2-star infantry, and they worked really well. I don't think 1-star infantry would work anywhere near as well. Like, I thought about building 1 or 2 1-star units per corps, and just having them be meat shields and absorb lots of losses. I don't think that's a good idea. Have everybody able to fight, and at 2 stars, everybody can fight. Okay, this is just a little short. So 1 more. That's not very many men I poured into the original group of raw recruits, and I think this one does it. Just do it step by step until I got these guys over the mark. And I'm going to do something else with the 2-star infantry that I have from the campaign. I'm going to try to turn as many of those as possible into the 3-star, and that's why I jumped from 23 or 24 3-star infantry to whatever it is, 54, and could have gone to 58 if I'd just been a little more patient. Okay, it's going to take a good officer, and I think, do I want to give up 500 more men and use a worse officer? I think I should have put 500 more men. In hindsight, should have gone a little bit lower, but I decided to go with good 2-star generals in these units to get them over 2 stars. And these units are not terrible. I mean, they have good efficiency, okay melee. Almost all the units have Harper's Ferries at the worst. There are a couple units end up with 55s, not many. They can fight. So what I just basically did was took all of my absolute raw recruits and made them 2-star infantry at 30. What is that? Yeah, 39 efficiency. They're fine. They're fine, and they're going to do well. And my whole purpose with it, I was thinking, I want these guys to get down to about 2,000. I'm going to throw them into every melee. I'm going to throw them into every fort. They're going to take huge losses, and at the end of the first day, I'll be able to put majors in these units because they will have done all the melee fighting, and be down to 2,000. And, so they'll take heavy losses, and I'll be able to put majors in these units, and they'll still have 2 stars because they'll have a lot more experience. Because it's a long day. It is a really long day. Didn't happen. These guys did not take a lot of losses. They did a great job. They got good kills. They, some of them are at 2,500, some at 2,450, some at 2,400. They did not bleed down to under 2,000. So, okay. Okay, so if I disband these guys, we now have the army is all the way up to 57 efficiency, which is quite a jump from, and a jump in the other skills as well, all because we bought all of those men with the money we had, and I'm not done. Like, I end up finding a bunch more cash. I still have too many weapons. I have too many officers, but at this point, I have to put 4 majors into the army, which is a shame. I have enough 3-star generals for all of my division command posts. Again, that's unnecessary. I spent too much time building the top of the chain of command and not enough time turning majors into lieutenant colonels and colonels. If I had to do it again, I would really focus on building brigadier generals and just stop there. I'd be very happy with 2-star generals as in division command. Again, logistics of 5 and training of 10 is the right answer. Okay, now what I'm doing is I'm taking and I'm pouring my 2-star infantry into these units of 500 best. Let's just call them 500 best. So, as you can see, I get about 1,000 with good 2-star generals. So these are my 2-star infantry that I built through the campaign. And I recommend, I'm taking these guys down pretty low, which can be a problem. Have 4 or 5 left in the rank bar. Oh, that's good. That's got 1,300 there. That's good. But that's a good 2-star general. And then what I'm going to do, and I would do this all at one time, I'd just pour all 2-star generals into, I'd make a whole bunch of 500-man units, but I'm just kind of like showing you here in a quick video, I'm pouring 3-star infantry. Yeah, it was too close. Like, you want to have a buffer of, I ended up having 5 because it made it just easy. This is just a little short. This is where I learned don't do that. Make sure you have a little buffer of 5, and then you can pour in your 3-star infantry and you'll be good to go. And look at that, 77, and look at the melee. The melee of 68, 77, firearms 84. So there's a drop in efficiency by doing this, but I got an increase in melee that was huge. And the reason is my 3-star infantry did not engage in as much melee as my melee cav, which was able to grind up melee very high, and that's what I duplicated when I bought veterans. So overall, huge, huge buff to, I think, melee and firearms both, I think. So, yeah, build units of 500, pour in 2-star infantry, leave yourself a little buff of 4, maybe 5. And then break down a 3-star infantry and pour your 3-star infantry on top of that. And you should, and what will happen is your 2-star units will slowly blend in to your 3-star infantry, and you will have all 3-star infantry, if that makes sense. So, and this is what I did with all the 2-star infantry that I built during the course of the campaign. So I took all the 1-star infantry, the raw recruits with absolutely no combat experience, turned them into 2 stars, and now I'm taking my 2 stars and turning them into 3-star infantry. Yeah, 4 seemed to work out just fine. What didn't work was 0, so 4 seemed to work. Your mileage will vary. So High Bob really squeezes out every point that you possibly can. He ends up with more 3-star than I do. And I recommend watching his videos. Very, very instructive. This is kind of, I would say this is a shortcut, but I spent weeks. It was weeks. Like, coming back to this, fiddling with it for a while, trying stuff. You know, it took me a long time. Now that I've done it once, next time I do it won't be, you know, I know what I'm doing and it won't take that long. Whole bunch of lessons learned here, and I hope that some of my lessons learned you're able to apply to your camp phase and it's easier for you. But really, you can't go wrong. If you grind a best unit and have 10 in training, and you take all your cash and you just duplicate that, you can do anything you want with it and just have a good time and upgrade your army. And you can't go wrong. You can just disband every unit after you make 20,000 of your, best soldiers. Disband every unit. Probably you end up with a very high 2-star everything, go to battle, it'll be good. Okay, I'm now at efficiency 79. Okay, I have too much cash, and this is what I want. I end up with about 1,200 men in my manpower pool. I want everybody to go to the battle. That is the right call. I have an army of over 200,000 going in on day 1. My corps commanders have their flag. I have too much money, but I got tired of fiddling around. I should have sold all the weapons in my inventory. That was a mistake. Should have sold them all and only bought back what I needed to equip my 1,200 men, which, like I said, I wouldn't be surprised if I have $600,000 here, 700,000. Could have built who knows how many more 3-star infantry. But look at these 3-star infantry. I have, I think, 263s, 261s, 2 CS Richmonds per. Oh, the other mistake I made was, for CS Richmonds, I put all the weapons into the army. I should have had 1 less unit and had some weapons in reserve. I recommend that. I have weapons in reserve for every weapon type except CS Richmond. And 20-pound Parrot. 20-pound Parrot, nothing you can do. But CS Richmond, I could have done something about that. I didn't lose any 20-pound Parrots in day 1, so that paid off. But look how many JF Browns I have. I could have sold those. I mean, I did sell the Harper's Ferries and 55s, but the Lamottes, I end up not replacing any of my Lamott losses because all my melee have had over 700 at the end of day 1. So there was no purpose. I was just going to replace losses up to 650, get all my units back to 650, which is a very efficient size. It's a little faster. It kills just as well. But all my units were over 700. And I used them. I mean, I put them in battle. They killed lots of units. They did a lot of fighting. They got thousands of kills. They just didn't take any losses. Same thing with Rifle Cav. Got huge kills, didn't take any losses, or very tiny. One of my Whitworths took a hit, but wasn't that big a deal. It's like 60, and I had more than that on hand. Anyway, should have sold all the weapons. Should have had some CS Richmonds in reserve. The way I think about it is if like one unit gets shot up, and I did have one CS Richmond get shot up and he's down to 1900, which is fine. I mean, that is a good size. But if I'd had some weapons on hand, I could have pumped him back up to, say, 2100. Does that make sense? So 2100 would be a better starting point for day 2 than 1900. So all my other units, I think, except for the CS Richmond, are over 21. I think like a lot of them around 2400, 2300 for some. Like here are 2 CS Richmonds at 2450 because that's all the weapons I had. I'd have been better off just making one of them 2500 and then having weapons in reserve, selling them, having them in the store, and then getting all my CS Richmonds back up to 2100. I think there were 2 CS Richmonds that were down to like 1900, something like that. And I could have easily done it. I mean, I didn't need all 1200 men. I only needed about, I don't know, maybe 400 or 500 to get my army where I wanted it. 600. And then the rest of it was just, where do I want to put them? And I put a lot of them into 1863s. Pumping some of my 1863s back up to 2400. First Corps does most of the fighting and most of the hard fighting. 4th and 5th Corps, I don't think everybody comes in on day 1, and I didn't take hardly any losses in 4th and 5th Corps. Hardly none. It was, the map in the north is really fast. Oh, you have to have a space here. You absolutely must have a space, because 1st Corps is going to take most of the losses, and you want to be able to move units between the corps in camp, and you can only do that if you have an empty space. So everybody has 24 units except 5th Corps, which has 23. So I have too much money, as you can see, and 1200 men. Wish I had 8 brigadier generals, more than I have, and a few dozen less majors. I would trade all of these majors for 8 brigadier generals. I would trade all of those majors for 4 brigadier generals. Okay, I hope that was helpful and that helps you in your camp phase. And yeah, good luck when you go to Washington or Richmond.